All right. So here with Douglas, we've got Douglas has a property, a fiveplex that he wants to evaluate. It's two duplexes with a back apartment. He's got some good numbers, and I wanted to hop on and give him a little bit of direction. So Douglas, go for it.
Yeah, so this is a property that came on the MLS yesterday. In my market, I've noticed that multifamily properties go pretty quickly. And so this is one that I'm wanting to assess correctly. And from some of the numbers that I initially saw and some of the numbers I've done some more digging into, I want to make sure that I'm assessing things correctly. So it's listed as a 10-bed, 5-bath. Doing more digging, I don't think that's accurate. I actually think it's a 9.5. It's two duplexes right next to each other with a garage in the back. On the MLS, they've listed the details as both properties, but they've only listed some of the specificity, like the address and the taxes for only one property. And so I logged into PropStream to try to get a little bit more information there, because I saw on this 9.5 property taxes of like $800, and I was like, that seems too good to be true. And so getting in there now, I'm trying to really ascertain, okay, am I buying, even just logistically, am I buying, will I have multiple transactions? Am I buying a duplex, and then a separate house? Or what does like a group, I think the MLS calls this a package deal or whatnot. So even just some of those logistics on how I move forward, trying to understand all of that. So given that it's actually two separate property addresses and all that stuff, that's what I'm trying to go through and analyze, make sure that my numbers are including everything, as well as one of the key things I'd like to take away from this is what are some key questions I need to ask my property manager or my realtor to get from the listing agent. I know that the both duplexes are fully rented out, and I know those rents, but I don't know some of the other costs associated here. I don't know cap rate, things like that. I want to make sure that as I ask her to take a next step, I know what my deliverables are there.
Okay, that makes sense. So why don't you go ahead and share your numbers, your current numbers with me?
Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Great. List price of $290. I said, hey, if I come over at 306, putting 20% down, this 330, essentially of the 5 rentable units, 4 of them, the 4 that are currently rented, come out to about 2,800. And so if that back unit was rented at 500, it's 330. All of these are 2-bed, 1-bath, like the duplexes are 2-bed, 1-bath, all rented at 700. Maybe they are average at 700, some are 650, some are 750. And I don't know the specifics on why there's differences there. I haven't asked my realtor if those are market rate, low, high. I would anticipate that maybe they can go up to 750 or 800, depending on condition or whatnot. But my worst case numbers, currently it's 2,800 is rented out and a $500 a month back unit. That's how I got to 33.
Okay, so your core numbers, those core 4, you don't really, since it's turnkey, you won't worry about ARV or rehab. So really you've got 2 main numbers. You get your purchase price and you got rent, right?
Yep.
So we've got a pretty good understanding of that. We can go ahead and throw in I think you said 2,800, right?
Yeah, 28 is what's currently rented out.
Okay, yeah, that's not bad. Okay, so undo that and leave the numbers normal there for a second. How confident are you that you can get a 4.25 rate?
I don't know. And that's one of those things, like, I don't know if I'm getting one loan for all of these properties, or if I would be getting individual loans on a duplex, and the back apartment.
You could do either.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, you could do either. I personally would do it as one loan. You save some closing costs. For my lender, it's about $1,500 per close that I save. So if you were to do say 2 closes, one on duplex with the back garage, and then one on the other duplex, you'd say $1,500, but it's, I mean, it's nothing substantial in the long term.
Well, and then there's also the battle of, if I do it individually, it could be classified as like going under my personal name versus going through my business. But there's also the lens of, if I go through my business and LLC, then we're not going to be looking at DTI and things of that nature. And on this type of thing, DTI might come into play, given some of the other property challenges I've been hitting.
Yeah.
So
okay, so I think 4.25 right now is pretty reasonable. 30-year AM, that's doable. Okay, so you mentioned some concerns about property taxes.
Yeah, so the property tax I have here. So when I look at the property on MLS and scroll down, right here, they have annual taxes of $835. And in my head, for 3 buildings, 3 structures, that just seems really, really low. Right. When I first ran numbers, I just put in 1,000. But then earlier today, I was like, if I jump on PropStream and actually look around, this is the target property. And so my assumption is that this little grouping is is the 3 buildings that we're actually going for. So I think I need to add the property taxes from both of these to get a more accurate number.
Yeah, what are those numbers?
This one looks like another 900. So we're looking at 900 plus 835, 1750.
Okay, yeah, put that in there, see what it does in the numbers.
I don't know all bills paid. That's something that that's an outstanding question that I need to have with my realtor.
Okay.
But without those, at this point, I think one of my biggest challenges with this deal is it's my first one going really after a multifamily property. And so as I've asked some questions, I'm still trying to get better understanding on, okay, calculating cap rate and all that stuff. And that's going to be based off rent, and it's going to be based off rent of what is currently leased out, not what's vacant.
Right.
And so that can be the change of 28 to 33. I'm using a number on if all the doors were filled.
And are you saying that that they're not all filled, or that 4 of the 5 are filled and you're unsure of the 5th?
I know 4 of the 5 are filled. So the 2 ones are all filled right now with these monthly rents.
Okay.
The one, the garage unit, is not filled. It's vacant right now.
Okay. So that's another question you can ask is, are all of them leased? And when they say that the last one isn't leased, you ask them for the most recent lease. Like, when did they leave? When did it become vacant? What did you have it leased for? Things like that. Another thing you can, to a certain extent with multifamily, you don't really need to overcomplicate, particularly a turnkey. You don't need to overcomplicate it with cap rate. When you're looking at buying something, it's just, income minus expenses, right? So you've got your purchase information, your income and expenses. Does it make sense, right? And we've talked about your cash on cash return goal being 15% or higher. And that's even with the context that rent values are going to continue to increase. And so even if you're at 14 or 13%, there could be a really good reason for you to continue to pursue the deal, because it's going to increase disproportionately. You're going to have a 30-year fixed loan. Your mortgage payment's not going to change, but rent is going to go up. Yep. Right. So those are some things to consider. Cap rate can be helpful, but it's most helpful when you're trying to force appreciation. And so now in a situation like this, let's say that you purchase it at let's just say a 10 cap, and you've got 3,300 income. That means your purchase price would be 330, right? And let's say you increase each unit $100 over the next 12 months. Right now you're at 3,800, and your property is now worth $380,000, unless you did some improvements and you increased the value of the property through making it more quality or improving the condition. But you just made $50,000 by just increasing rents to market rate. And so that can help in the fact that it gives you a higher loan to value, or a more favorable loan to value, or more favorable loan to value, so lower loan to value. And then at that point, what you can do is you can access some of that equity when you have it through a line of credit or some other, you can use it as security on another debt position to be able to use. So, but for now, in the short term, what really matters is income minus expenses. And so your first pass at numbers make a lot of sense. They look great. 15% cash on cash return in I think a pretty conservative position. Your monthly insurance payment, that looks about reasonable. You could toggle that up a little bit just to see what it looks like. But I think the questions that you want to ask right now, and one other thing is your 10% management fee going to change once you close on this? Is that going to change to 9 or 8?
I don't know. I need to talk to her and see what her rates are per property or whatnot.
Yeah, ask your property manager what their step down rates are. And so once you get to a certain amount of doors, usually it's, sometimes it's 4 doors, they'll bump you down to 9%. Sometimes it's 8 doors, but just ask what that is. And that'll help you better run your numbers. But this is a conservative estimate, so you're in a good position there. So the questions I think you should be asking are they all leased? And what were they leased for most recently? Couple that with feedback from your property manager asking, what's the market rate for this? Right? Are these leased higher than I can reasonably expect to get right now, which I would bet is probably not the case. But then you want to get their T12, or with the larger multifamily T12, I think that language makes a lot of sense. But the smaller multifamily, they might not understand it. T12 just means trailing 12 months of rent in their books, essentially, so that you can see not just what do they say they rent out for, but what did they actually have coming in to their bank account. So that's what I would recommend, is getting those. So last 12 months of books, and then clarify all bills paid, that and get the leases if you can. But the leases don't matter as much if you've got the historical rental values.
Yeah. Okay. One other thing that's a part of this property is that it is relatively close to one of the universities, walking distance to McMurray. I go back to my college days, and that means that my properties might be vacant for 3 months out of the year because of the summer or whatnot. Given that I've never experienced this, is that something that I need to be mindful of? Should I increase my vacancy cut of my numbers because of that? Because I potentially know that's going to happen, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it depends on your target, who you're trying to target. If you're trying to target a college student, and you want to give them flexibility to have a 9-month lease, that's fine. You just need to increase your rent to be able to cover that. I would still stick with a 12-month lease, though. Okay. Stick with a 12-month lease and go from there. And in that situation, you'll be able to release it up likely before school starts. But if your property is well positioned relative to a certain nearby asset, particularly university, you have market power. So you can increase, you could probably get a premium for those rooms. You could also ask your property manager if they would be willing to rent out by room. Now there's increased expenses there, just because you're gonna have more people in there, and they're college kids. Generally, college kids don't treat properties very well, but you can really cash flow a ton. So it depends on what your goal is. For me, if something comes up and it's perfect for a college student, perfect, that's fine. But my general approach is, in the market that I'm in, there's 4 different universities or higher education institutions, and I let the other units be filled, like the others in the city, be filled by college students, and all that demand is soaked up by them, and I rent out to long-term renters, people that'll be there hopefully 2, 3, 5, 10 years.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to hear.
Go back to your numbers real quick, because it seems like you got a pretty high level of confidence in these numbers. With the only thing that you really need to double down on is the all bills paid, if there's an all bills paid aspect to it. And then first of all, if they do all bills paid now. Second of all, what their lease says about all bills paid. They might be doing all bills paid, but just have it as an agreement verbally, or maybe they're on a 30-day, month-to-month lease, where when you renew the lease, you can say, hey, you guys, you pay your own utilities. The only challenge there would be is if each unit is not separately metered, meaning there's not separate meters for each unit. So let's say you've got a duplex and you've only got one gas line going to the house, and then it's separated out. That's fine. You can put in the lease that you take the gas, if the gas bill's $50, each side pays $25, right?
Yep.
It's not perfect because then it's not mutually equitable to everybody. If side one uses way more than side two, just because they really like using the grill or their gas grill, that's just something they're going to deal with. So
yeah,
but you can adjust the all bills paid aspect to it.
Yeah, that's one thing that obviously wasn't included in the MLS listing that I would have loved to see. Some of the other multifamily property listings that I've seen have their operating margins and operating expenses and stuff listed out. This one didn't. So,
but overall, those numbers look pretty good, and it seems like you got a pretty high level of confidence in each of them, with the exception of the all bills paid and the rent that you just got to figure out. What is a reasonable market rent?
Yeah.
And it could be higher than that. Your agent or your property manager might say, actually, I think I can get $50 more per door when we release it up. Yeah. That's fine. But what you can use is, given that one's vacant, you could use as a negotiation stronghold that the income's really only $2,800, right? So if you're doing your, property value calculation, you've got 2,800, divided by, I don't know, 12%, or I guess 2,800 times 12, right? Your yearly income, right? That's a $280,000 property value, right? Or around 290. Right? That would be a 12% cap rate, which indicates that the property it might not be in great condition. But with a property like this, where the numbers look pretty good, and you're essentially trying to evaluate, what do the leases look like, all of that stuff, I recommend make an offer and get under contract, and then figure the rest of it out. Like, get it under contract so that nobody else can sweep it out from under you, and then do all your due diligence, like get the leases, get the last 12 months of rent, all of those things, so that you can do that with the protection of knowing that you still got the property under contract.
Okay, so when numbers look like this, to make sure that I'm understanding correctly, you're saying go ahead and try to get under contract, and then get the T12s and all that stuff, so that you have the protection of the contract. You can ask for concessions if stuff comes out. And
usually with commercial contracts over 5 units and above, there's not an option cost. There's earnest money. There's usually not an option cost. There's just a due diligence period. You can ask for 30 days. You can make it more competitive by saying 14 days. You're used to doing this type of stuff in 5 days, or 7 days. So that's not a big deal. But 14 days of a due diligence period. Throw in 302 as the purchase price. Why'd you pick 306 out of curiosity?
If someone went from 290 to 300, I wanted to go above that. I'm like, some people might go to 305, so 306 just to differentiate a little bit.
Yeah, I think 302 is fine. If they come back with highest and best, maybe ask 306. I mean, the difference isn't that much, right? You look at your cash on cash return, it's like 0.5%. So that's a situation where I definitely wouldn't try and lowball and end up missing out on it just because you want to be as cost conscious as possible. If the numbers look good, they look good.
Okay. So this probably means that I need to contact my realtor and say, hey, I want to get under this, I want to offer, try to get under contract as quickly as possible. And then after that, we can either give a 14 or 30 day, you didn't call it option period, you called it what?
It's a due diligence period, yeah.
Due diligence period.
But functionally it's the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, another thing you can consider is talk to your agent and see what actually qualifies the difference between a 5-unit and a 4-unit. That'll change your lending options. Because if it's a duplex with a garage that's just been converted, and it's, you know, that could still just be a duplex where one of them has access to the garage, right? And that's a 4-unit that you're funding, and you can purchase it for them. You know, you can say like, I'll treat it like a 5-unit when I'm purchasing it from you, but legally purchasing it as a 4-unit because this is just a garage on one of the properties. That might offer you a little bit more flexibility and a better rate on your lending. But I would check with the expert on that to make sure that that the way that they define property or a door on a property is consistent with all of the legal conditions that you'll go through.
So specifically going to a lender and asking, how do they define door? Is that correct?
You will, I mean, you can do that with a lender. I just ask your agent because they've got a bunch of experience with that type of stuff. If they don't know, then you can ask the lender too.
Okay. Yeah, because whenever I look at PropStream, I don't know if this is, I mean, they said that there's a garage in the back. That doesn't look like a garage. And so I am trying to just even visualize this and say, okay, if this is the property address that they provided, 1849 South 14th, I'm trying to get a better feel for where the two other properties are, and I just assume it's to the left. Yeah, this makes it look like this looks almost like a 2-story, all that stuff. So
yeah, that's a good point.
There's some just details there that I'm missing that would be helpful for me to have as I move forward and say, okay, what would this look like? And then also talking to an insurance provider and saying, okay, can you give, does insurance providers have to break it out by building, or could they lump it in similar to my lender and say,
that's a good question.
This one contract covers all?
Yeah, but those are, I think what's important is that you're recognizing, like, I want to keep the main thing, you know, like these other small things you can figure out, you know, just get under contract, make sure the main thing, which is income and expenses, giving you enough margin to make this thing reasonable, get it under contract, and then figure out the details from there.
Okay. That's
the other thing is, just because it's multifamily doesn't mean that you need to get distracted by cap rate. If you're trying to force equity and, you know, all of that stuff, or you're trying to use cap rate as a way to negotiate the price down, then that's fine. But you know, in your market, that multifamily properties don't come up very often, and cash flowing multifamily properties come up even less often. And so you would expect that this is going to go for at or maybe above list.
Okay.
But check that with your realtor. You know, the only person buying these types of properties are investors. You know, you're not having someone buying it saying, this is where I want to raise my kids and all that stuff. Why would you buy a 5-plex for that? Right? You can't even get conventional lending on a 5-plex. So they're going to do the exact same thing you're doing. They're running numbers on it. And if you got to the point where you said, hey, I would need this to be at 270, then you can use the cap rate argument. But other than that, you know, I don't think you need to worry about it.
Okay. Okay, well then I'll reach out to my agent next and ask some of these questions, see if it's a good idea to get under contract, and then if we agree, then after we get under contract, I can ask about T12 and use some of that time to go from there.
Yeah.
What normally from a time to close, let's say that you have a 30-day due diligence period, what is the time to close after that?
You can make it usually whatever you want. I mean, the larger multifamilies are in like a 90 to 180 day close period. You know, with something like this, you could probably do a 45 to 60 day close period. On your first one, I recommend having a little bit longer close period if you can get away with it, just because it gives you a little bit of time to account for additional variables that you're not really used to.
And is that, I think I know this answer, but for clarity, that's a 60-day close period from being under contract, not from end of due diligence.
Correct. Yes.
So 30
yes.
for due diligence, 60 for close,
Mhm.
from contract.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, this would be great though. I mean, you essentially in your first 60 days, you would go from 0 to 7 units.
Yeah. Which would be awesome. A lot of movement, and a lot of successes throughout all that. So, yeah, now let's see what that looks like, and probably go the commercial lending route versus conventional on this one. And that's a first time for me in figuring out what all those things matter, and is 425 acceptable? Should I bump that up to 4.5? All that. I think those types of changes though don't switch my numbers up drastically. We were talking about 0.5%. Yeah, it's $40 cash flow. If I go up to 4.5. So options are out there, and that's good. Now I got to see if this is a property that I want to take on and my agent will take on. Go from there.
Cool. Awesome, man. Anything else I can do to help?
No, I think that's it. I really appreciate the time, and I'll keep you up to date on it.
Cool. Sounds good.